Rev up your engines! Okay, we got a 2012 Prius. It got 54 miles a gallon driving over here. To hybrid or not to hybrid? That's the question. So I'm going to analyze it all with the new scan tool that I got, and I'll tell you everything you want to know about hybrid cars. Now, I normally don't tell people to buy used hybrids, but he bought this thing with a whopping 24,000 miles on it. So that's nothing. My experience of these Priuses is the battery pack, which is a hybrid battery pack, Johnny doesn't go out till you get over a couple 100,000 miles. So I bought it with 24,000 miles. There should be a lot of life in that. We're going to check it with the machine. If you do buy one of these used, best to find a guy like me with a machine like that, plug it in and tell you what kind of shape it's in. But with that low mileage and being a Toyota Prius, it's not really something you're going to have to worry about. And of course, with partially electric, this is hybrid, it's a hybrid boost system, there are various stages and prices of batteries. For instance, this thing, you can get a brand new battery from Toyota for $2,750, right? If you have a plug-in later model one or a plug-in, say RAV4, then the price of the battery goes up to like $6,900. And if you go full electric with a Tesla Model S, the price of the battery is a whopping $20,000. So those you're really going to worry about. These, not so much. For instance, I've never seen a Prius start on fire. I've never seen one of their batteries go bad. Pretty good quality control at Toyota, so that's not something you really got to worry about. From the bird poop on it has the little lift kit, so it's a little higher, and that probably isn't a bad idea because you can see it's lifted, but it's still not really high up in the air. And considering you got 54 miles a gallon driving here, obviously the lift kit did not fundamentally lower his gas mileage very much, you know? I know there's a lot of people out there that are absolute fanatics. They whine about half a mile a gallon here or there, but it obviously did not increase the drag all that much. Now, of course, this is a normal Toyota Prius hybrid. The battery is a boost system, so you get better gas mileage. It allows the braking system to regenerate energy. Realize your car going down the road is nothing but kinetic energy. In a normal car, you slam on the brakes, all that kinetic energy is turned to heat at the brakes. That's why the brakes get real hot. Touch them sometime or get a thermal gun. You'll see they get really hot. These, a lot of that energy recharges the battery. Since it recoups that energy, that's how it gets better gas mileage. So, it's not like you're driving the car around with the battery. They're relatively small batteries, as you'll see later when we look at it. They're not all that big. They're more of a boost system. Hybrid synergy drive. The engine itself is what's called an Atkinson cycle engine. They put out less horsepower, but they're more efficient. And then you've got the converter, the battery, the electric motor. And see those orange things? Well, you don't want to touch those. Unless you get electrician's gloves and these cotton ones. You might think, why do you have two layers? Well, guess what? Your fingernails can knock little holes. High voltage electricity will go through those little holes and you'll have a shocking experience. The gloves inside are more to protect the rubber here than to protect your hands. So your fingernails won't make any cuts on these. And if you really want to be a fanatic about it, anytime you work on the systems, you blow them up first. And then you squeeze them and see if they leak out. You don't want any pinholes. Yeah, it's a pain operating on high voltage electricity. That's the way it goes. A lot of stuff that isn't high voltage, spark plugs, air filter, you can work on that stuff yourself. And if you really want to understand electricity, you can mess around with these things. I've seen guys replace their own batteries. The batteries don't weigh that much. It's not like a Tesla battery that's 1,200 pounds. They're just little bitty things. They don't weigh all that much. It's not that big of a deal. And you can learn, you take off the orange safety device and drain the battery, and then you're not going to get zapped. Then you don't even have to wear the gloves, but it's a good idea if you're messing with any of those orange wires to wear the gloves until you get a voltmeter and see that everything you're working on has 0 volts. Just be forewarned. Now, I got a new toy. You can see it's Think Car Diagnostic 3. Noticed it's green because it's for hybrid and electric cars. If you're going to buy one of these things, and if you're ever going to have a mechanic work on it, if they don't have equipment like this, walk away. You got to have good equipment to work on hybrid and electric cars. You can't use a cheap little meter that you can get from Taiwan for $20 a voltage ohm meter. No. I use a fluke meter, and actually, this thing's got meters built into it. As you can see by the fuse, it has both 12 amp fuse for high, and it has a 500 milliamp fuses for low. Because on electric cars, you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with high voltage, but you're also dealing with extremely low voltage when you're messing around with magnetic fields. So this thing can analyze them both. That's why a lot of guys won't work on these things, because they don't know how they work. And they don't have the equipment to work on them. So they just say, take it to the dealer. Well, you don't have to take it to the dealer. There's guys that have brains, and if you really wanted, you could learn how to do a bunch of stuff yourself. Odds are you're not going to buy one of these unless you're a mechanic. But you can get a good meter. You can learn how to do a bunch of tests. So we're going to see what kind of shape this thing's in. As you can see, it's a hybrid, but it's got a regular OBD port like any other car. And this is why if you're going to get a hybrid car or an electric car, do a little research. Teslas don't have OBD ports in them because old Elon's a scumbag, so nobody can work on the vehicles. Understand, you might say, but Scotty, all cars made after 1996 have to have OBD2 plugs. Only gasoline and diesel cars are covered under that. Electric cars don't have to. Now this is a hybrid with a gasoline engine, so by law it would have to. But if you take, say, a Nissan Leaf, it's a pure electric car. It has an OBD port I can plug into to get information. The Teslas don't. Another reason not to buy a Tesla, hardly anybody's going to work them other than Tesla mechanics. They're going to stick it to you, charge you a small fortune. Go to intelligent diagnosis here. Got a passenger car. Forget this one. I just got that. Obviously, it's beta. I couldn't buy it anywhere. It's not even for sale. And obviously, beta ain't working too good. So, Dad, we're going to this Autel EV stuff on it. We'll turn that on. We'll plug it in. And I've had great luck with Autel. So, here we go. Vehicle detected. Look at that. Look at that, it figured it out already. Toyota Prius, North America, with the Atkinson cycle engine. Now it's communicating. We're gonna do a fault scan. 77% done, 96% done, now it's all done. All right, there's a bunch of green stuff. I don't want to attach any photos. Code for the tire pressure monitoring. Data from transmitter ID2 not received. As they age, the stupid sensors, the batteries go bad. Who cares? Tire pressure gauges are cheap. You want to spend all that money? I don't either. And it's got a code for driver door motor ECU communication stop. Let's check that out. The ECU combines the body system and the gateway system and controls. We can do an active test. Look at all the things you can do. You can turn locks on. You can turn locks off. I mean, and this is all just the door. Look at this stuff. It's insane. Let's just say it goes down the road. His door locks work. His fob works. Some of it is a little overkill. I think the Japanese were following the Germans on this one. Now what we're going to do, battery test. For this particular test, we want to connect this. And unfortunately, the people that make these things, they won't work unless you have internet. So now I got to go back in the house. The internet doesn't come out this far. In the house, now it's working. All right, we'll start looking at data here. Okay. The state of charge is 60.7%. Now, I haven't worked on this particular one before, so I don't know the history of it. Realize it's 11 years old, okay? So, it's got a 60.3% state of charge. From my experience, it's totally normal for one of these. They lose a certain bit of charge as they go. He drove it a long way to get here. And it charges itself while you're driving down the road and regenerating any brakes. Now, here, it also says battery 1416. That's a little bitty battery. Now, it may sound crazy. You got a little bitty battery that's 12 volts. You got a big battery that's hundreds of volts. Now, for safety reasons, they don't allow the big battery to just run things by itself. So, when you turn the car on, it uses the 12-volt battery, and it goes to computer modules and relays. Then it allows the big battery to start the car. This isn't like a regular car. It doesn't have a 12-volt starter that you turn, and the 12-volt starter spins the engine. This uses a motor generator to start the car. As nutty as it sounds, if that little bitty battery goes bad, you can't start the car. It doesn't matter if the big battery has hundreds of volts. It will not work unless the little battery is good. So, even though you got a big battery and a little battery, it's a good idea to check your little battery every once in a while. You got like me, put a machine on, check it out, because in a normal car, it's like, oh well, when your battery's going bad, you only have one battery, a little battery. And when it starts to go bad, it'll kind of like run, and then start, or your lights will get dim. You'll know it's going bad. These, they don't work that way. The car will start and run fine, but one day you push the button and it won't start. And that little battery will be bad. Now, on the other hand, if you got a jump pack, you can jump it. You can jump start the little battery and get it going. Let's look at some more stuff here. You can see they're very complex. They have their own cooling system for the battery system. When you're driving, you can see it gives you all the information on the regenerative braking system. charging it back up. And you can see here it says high voltage start condition is normal. Now these things are very complex, but with a machine like this, you can analyze it. If it would say it was abnormal, then the first thing we do, we check the little battery. If the little battery didn't work, great, you'd replace it. And you'd hope it's that, because past that, you're getting into computer modules, relays. But this machine allows you to test all those things to see, is that good, is that bad? It can get really complex, but it will be able to figure it out. Even it shows you the temperature of the generator motor, in case you got a problem. Shows you the torque of the motor. I mean, these things give you tons of information if something goes wrong, as long as you can find somebody who knows what all this stuff means. You can see the voltage on this is 222, before and after boosting, showing that the battery's in pretty good shape. If you get an inverter problem, inverter fail, then that'll turn on, it'll trip a code, and you'll be able to figure out what goes on. It even shows you the consumption power of the air conditioner. Let's turn it on. Check it out, it works. It's taking 1,100 watts now. So let's turn it off. And it goes back to zero. Understand this. This vehicle does not have a belt-driven air conditioner. It is high voltage electric air conditioner. And as such, it does use quite a bit of power. So, if you're using that air conditioning and you're in stop-and-go traffic, your gas mileage is going to go down quite a bit. That's a lot of power to use. But, on the other hand, this machine shows it to you. And check this out. We're going through all the battery. There are a bunch of battery blocks with cells, and you can see one, they're all pretty close, 15.79, 15.74. What we look for is consistency. And you can see, here we go, battery block, look at them all. They're all pretty much the same. If you found one that was a crapper, and you can see, they're all pretty much the same. This is the auxiliary battery, which is the 12-volt battery. 14 volts is good for that. But if you were the type of person who likes working on things and figuring things out, believe you could take it out. It's in the back seat. Disconnect the orange, wear the gloves. You could take it out and replace it if you wanted to. That's what guys do who refurbish batteries. But this is why I tell you, if you're going to buy a battery for one of these and it finally craps out, take my advice. Buy a new one, okay? Spend the $27.50, because the rebuilt ones are ones that just, they look at these and they replace the bad one. Well, the old ones, usually these break over 200,000 miles. They have 200,000 miles on them. You can see there's 14 blocks, and each block has a whole bunch of little 3.74 volts all shunted together with shunts. So why would you replace one if it's 15 years old and has 200,000 miles? You're only asking for trouble down the road. If it does go bad, my advice, put a new one in. They're not that bad now. They've been around long enough. If you want to cheap out and get a rebuilt one, that's your own choice. Just don't say I didn't warn you. Check it out. I guess this machine breathes. It's showing the inhaling air temperature. Go to the passenger door. There's an air filter in here. Make sure it's clean. And whatever you do not cover it with a seat cover if your seats get old, because that sends air to cool the battery. And the little inhaling air temperature, that's the temperature of the air going in to cool the battery. Here we go. We can see the temperature of the battery. Look, B1's 35. Now this is Celsius. 36, 34. They're not going to be exactly the same, because of course some are closer to the fresh air, some are a little bit further away. Shows you the minimum and maximum voltage charge on the battery packs. Check it out. It even gives you the internal resistance. Look, these are all right. If all of a sudden you saw the internal resistance on one went absolutely bananas and was high, you'd know that that particular one was starting to short out. Here's an interesting thing. Check it out. The number of historical codes, 0. It hasn't screwed up in the past. It's not screwing up in the present. Now, without one of these machines, you can forget it. So I gotta say kudos to the Autel guys. You saw, we checked everything about the battery, the inverters, the fan motors, the temperature, the voltage, right? By plugging this thing into the OBD port on this Toyota. We didn't have to unplug the battery pack, hook up adapters. I got a whole box of adapters. It's a pain in the wazoo. Now on this, it's not that bad, because it's top out the back, it's under the back seat. It's not that hard to get to. But on some of these electric cars, you gotta drop the battery pack and it might weigh 1,200 pounds. Who on earth is gonna do that, right? Well, this thing's doing it right on the car. Now, like I said, I'm not a fan of Tesla. Tesla doesn't have an OBD port on their cars. So, you can't plug it in. But most of the manufacturers do have OBD plugs on their hybrids and on their electric cars. Take the Ford Mustang electric car. It's not really a Mustang, it's an SUV, but Mach-E, what's the speed of sound, you know? I mean, it's insane, the names. But it's got an OBD port, and I can do this kind of stuff on it. You can't do it on a Tesla. Another reason not to buy a Tesla. Hey, this thing's in excellent shape. Granted now, he's only got 70,000 miles on it, it's a Toyota. But it shows you that the battery pack is still in good shape. He was worried about it because of the 10 years old. The main thing it has to do with is how often the battery was charged, discharged, charged, discharged, and that is pure mileage. It's in the plug-in, you can't plug it in. It charges itself as you're driving down the road. So, the lower mileage means that battery's probably gonna last a really long time. And heck, even with the lift kit, he got 54 miles a gallon. I mean, can you complain about that? No, you can't. He bought it used. He was worried about the battery, but he took a gamble, and now he's not worried because he saw the machine shows the battery's in good shape. So that shuts this case. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.